Hey, welcome. We've got such a large group tonight for cltfc fan team, for the fans, by the fans.
Damn it.
Jorge, top Ben in the house. Leo, Eddie, Jonathan, Houston, Javi, thank you so much for showing up and talking tonight. I'm going to shut up and let you take it from here.
So, I mean, as everybody knows, right, Top Ben and I and another guy named Jonathan last week kind of started discussing about the connection, I guess, between Charlotte FC and the Latino community, and that sort of spurred this big conversation on social media. So we decided to come back, bring some folks on the show, and have a true discussion about it. So, Jorge, we'll let you go ahead and kind of get started, man, on where we left off.
So basically, we were talking about last week how Charlotte hasn't done a good job yet of connecting with the Latino culture. I think it's something that they're lacking right now. That I'm sure they're wondering ways to kind of connect with the community, but it's an opportunity that they're missing out. And I think we're 6-7 months away from playing, and I don't see any connection yet. So we wanted to dive in a little bit deeper on this conversation and maybe talk to a couple of people and see their thoughts and pretty much what they think Charlotte's missing, and maybe some ideas they can bring.
Exactly. So I know Leo was pretty passionate about this, in a good way, of course. So Leo, man, go ahead and tell us what you think. Like, you know, what's your concerns with the club and that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate that. You know, I'm just a guy on Twitter who wanted to get engaged and wanted to have a conversation. So I do appreciate the opportunity to come in, which kind of brings me to the first thing that I think the club is missing out on, which is just engagement and inclusion, right? Like I don't really have any standing or credentials or anything like that in the community, but I'm involved with the fanhood. I'm involved with your Twitter. I'm involved with your channel, and I was able to come on the show and speak to something that I'm very passionate about, right? So like me, there are many people in the Hispanic community that have that same connection to soccer, that feel that same passion. They may not have the credentials to go along with that passion, but they do have the knowledge, they do have the historical context from their parents and their parents' parents and their home nations most of the time, where they can really speak very, very well to what you can do to make me feel included, right? So that was one of the very first things that I noticed with not just Charlotte FC. It really happens a lot in the corporate environment too, which is they tend to kind of put us all into one pot when the Hispanic community is just as diverse as anything you can find. There's the first generation immigrants. You have Mexico, people from Mexico, people from Central America. If you go to North Guatemala, they might share more something in common with people from Mexico than if you go to Southern Guatemala, where they're more like Central American and they share the same slang, they share the same culture, same customs. So there's so many differences in the Hispanic community that in order to really, really capture that, you got to have a very strong investment in your company, in your team, and in your structure to be able to keep up with all these things, right? Because right now, I feel like what's happening is like there's this carbon copy of what other MLS teams have done in the past or what's worked for some communities. And there hasn't really been any innovation in connecting with a wider audience of the Hispanic community that kind of brings everybody in. So those were my initial thoughts. I shared this with my YouTube channel. I've been very passionate about this for quite some time because it's been, let's be honest, it's been hard to get invested in MLS. It's been hard to feel like it is something that represents me or represents my community or represents our culture. And sometimes it really feels like it's just being kind of walked past the fact that there are so many different, again, customs in the Hispanic community that you need to care for in order to, one, grow your fan base. And then also it makes sense. It makes economic sense. If everybody's going for the same kind of community, then you're missing out on an opportunity to connect with something on a deeper level.
So let me ask you a question then, right? So the club itself, right? I would say that the club itself really hasn't. It's fairly new, right? I would say at the beginning, Glick and Tepper basically kind of dropped the ball, right? Because if it wasn't for this extra year that we had, right? It could be a whole nother conversation we'd be having. But, Nick came in February, right? And in February, he came in straight into the PSL shit, right? He had to put up with all that crap, and then it's like at the same time, he's also building this team, right? For like marketing, the ticketing folks, everything, actually the actual squad itself. So I can see the progression going. Maybe it's not as quick as we like, but Eddie, give us some thoughts on what you're thinking, man.
Well, I definitely think that the biggest thing is just a disconnect with the community itself, right? I think that the club hasn't really reached out into the grassroots of what should be. I believe they should have a more grassroots approach to the whole thing, and they really haven't been able to reach out to that community there. I see that they have done certain things around town that are very good, like implementing some of the smaller soccer parks around town and building that out as a ways to sort of connect the community, and especially like in low-income areas of Charlotte, basically. But I think they need to do more, right? And they just are not really targeting any of the communities as far as that is, especially around the Latino and Latinx community, right? The biggest thing there, right, outside of the PSLs and everything, is always comes down to just resources, engagement, and cost. And because of that, I think that they're missing a huge target audience that they could easily bring in. I think they have taken one approach that I do like, especially because I am highly involved in the community as far as running a lot of the soccer tournaments around town and those kinds of things. I think one of the things that will definitely bring in some more of that buy-in would definitely be to involve the youth and give the same possibilities, right, the opportunities to those Latino youth, right, that can possibly build out their their youth program. I do know that they have a U17 academy for the Charlotte FC, and I know those guys are not paying, right? The parents, I've talked to the parents. I know some of the parents. I am one of those parents, and I know that they haven't paid for that. And I think that's a great approach for that, but they need to invest a lot more than just on a few people, right? Because if they get that buy-in, right, and we see a little bit more of those kids that are of that background, they should be able to, sort of build on top of that. And I think that's a way for them to reach out. But I feel like they're just not doing enough, right? And especially since we're what, 7 months away from kickoff. And
So, I mean, it kind of goes back to my point, though, right? I mean, I pictured this club. Yes, we were named like 2 years ago, right? Yes, we had the Charlotte FC name came out, all that fun stuff. But I don't know, right? I'm going to play devil's advocate a lot tonight. So my point being is, until Nick came into the picture, I mean, where was Charlotte FC really going, right? It was a lot of us out there on the socials that were really drumming the beat, and getting the hype going and that sort of thing. And now we finally have the captain that's trying to steer the ship, right? So, Juicy Yavi, give us some points, man. Yavi, can you hear us?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It cut up as soon as you said the name, and I was like, oh, shit, I think it's about me. So listen, I feel like I agree with a lot of the points Leo and Eddie are making. It just seems like on my behalf, wanting a Charlotte FC team for many years, I've obviously want and desire more engagement and more proactiveness from the team to reach out to the Latin community. So I feel like they're dropping the ball by not finding out where those needs are and how to reach the community. There's plenty of places, plenty of events that are happening that, like Eddie said, the local soccer clubs that you have Mexican players that the only thing they invest their Sundays in is playing soccer on the field. Charlotte FC should be there trying to promote not only the sport, but also the team, right? Because I think there's a huge lack of knowledge in our community on top of everything that we don't necessarily know that there's a MLS professional team that's coming, that's going to start playing in March. So I think it's two sides. They're not doing enough to let people know, and then our people just they're not with it when it comes down to the MLS, because we all cheer for our local home country teams, right? So we're vested into those, even though we're not in our countries. But nobody here is appealing to us either. So then there's that disconnect, and I think Charlotte FC could come up with initiatives to be present at the events that Latinos are already present in, at least to get the word out. And I see that they're trying to throw in little Spanish tweets and hey, happy independence to this country and all those things. But Latinos aren't on Twitter, not as much as you would think. So they are still not getting that message. And enough is not being done to get the message across.
Right. So right. Twitter. I mean, I see it, right? Twitter. I see it on Instagram. I see it on Facebook, right? I see them trying to churn out content, right, the best they can. We'll get way deeper into the discussion. I'm just going to let Jonathan have a say real quick. Jonathan, I know you're down there on the grassroots level too, man. So what's your thoughts?
Well, yeah. First of all, I'm in Vegas, so if I'm sweating, I'm sorry. It's 105, and I'm in my car, and it's really hot. Everything I'm going to say, it comes from a place of love, because I want the best for the club, and I want the best for the community to be a part of the club. So everything I'm going to say, which is going to be hypercritical, is based on me wanting the best, me and all of us wanting the best for the club. I used to work at a after-school program for immigrant and refugee kids in East Charlotte called Our Bridge for Kids. I still talk to a lot of the families. I still bring them food. Well, I did up until 2 weeks ago. And when I would go into the neighborhoods on Eastway Drive, I would not only talk to the individual families that I was giving food to, but I would also talk to anybody who was on the street who obviously they love soccer. So my first question would be, hey, do you know about this Charlotte FC team that's coming next year? No. Have they reached out to you at all? No. there's no engagement at all from what I've seen with the Hispanic community. Now, like you said, Lee, the Knicks just come on, so we're going to give them a chance to get going here. But as we've seen, Knicks been here for what, 6 months?
Yeah, since February.
So, right. So I feel like, and I hate to use this word, that I really hope this is not a strategy. I hope this is a oversight and not a strategy. Because if it's a strategy, we have a problem.
Right. So fair enough. Right. So again, I'm hearing like, hey, let's reach out to the Latino community. I'm hearing, there's not enough going on to bring in the Latino community into the Charlotte FC. But to be honest with you, are they advertising anywhere? Because I'm not really seeing it either, right? So the question is it just bad marketing overall, or are they just, too busy trying to build this company, right, which is only 6 months old? Go ahead.
I think I'm going to jump in on that one. I think that's not only in the Latin community, that's everywhere. If you just drive around uptown Charlotte, you would never know there's a team coming.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and like I was just over here on the Strip yesterday, and right down the middle of the Strip, they have the Vegas Forum for the Vegas Golden Knights. There's a presence here for their professional teams. Everybody knows the Panthers. That's fine, but if you just walk around uptown Charlotte, and uptown is where they're in the South End. That's their bread and butter right there. But you're not seeing any. There's no advertising. There's the one. Cats Blue Line train that's wrapped, which is a great idea. We should have a Cats bus that goes down Central Avenue, a Cats bus that goes down South Tryon that's wrapped with Charlotte FC gear. In my opinion, that's how you get engagement out there. Easy for me to say, it's not my money, but that's how you get engagement in the community. You have to be seen to be known.
That's right. So top in, go ahead, man. Jump in here real quick.
Yeah. So I think, Lee, you have a very good point, which is how early it is for the organization, right? So really, if you really look at it, it's been 6 months. But what's important about this conversation and this group right here is that it should ideally help inform the club of what it needs, right? So when it starts to build that staff, instead of bringing a marketing expert, you bring a multicultural marketing expert. That should really be the takeaway from a conversation like this, if there is a feedback loop that exists, right? Because there is a need. We're telling you that there is a need. There is something, and yes, there is a missed opportunity in general when it comes to marketing. But I think that's getting fixed little by little, right? With the movement of the club and the growth of the club. But we're still early enough in the conversation that it would be great if the club was saying, okay, we want you to be part of our foundation, not think about you later down the road and then try to fix something that we could have avoided in the first place, right? So you can address the problem as a whole, the marketing in general, and then you can hire somebody who can help you with your multicultural marketing, because like I mentioned with Jorge before, marketing in Spanish, really any other language, is not just translating, right? Like I've never in my life called the coach entrenador, never. It's el profe, el jefe, el coach, and things those are like little things, but they're important to me, because then when I see that, I'm like, they just threw it on Google Translate and that's it. As opposed to like if you say, hey, bienvenido profe, or enhorabuena profe, or something like that, that's a different feel to it that connects with you on a different level. So that's what if we're looking at what the goals and objectives of something like this, something like a panel like this could do, is that inform the next wave of needs that the club should have as it continues to build from the ground up.
So jumping in on Benjamin's question, I had a really good conversation with Ronald. He runs an account called Parceros United, and so they're pretty much like a branch off of, like, a lot of them are based off of Atlanta supporters groups and of the Latino community there. And he said that they had a similar issue where theirs was a little bit different. They already had Latinos coming in, but like nobody was gathering them together or acknowledging them. So what they did, which I thought was a great idea, is they took it upon themselves to kind of include everyone in the Latino community that they saw, they would have block parties, or they would do before the games tailgates with Spanish music, include everyone in, and show the Latin culture. I think that's a great way that Charlotte could do from here to the start of the season is, hey, host some block parties or host something to show the Latino community the culture of, show the Spanish culture and start interacting with people. Also, if you're going to have events, don't have events like the Copa America final was a great example. You guys went to they went to a restaurant in South End, or a bar in South End. 10% of the people cared about the game. Nobody else did. So the environment wasn't there, right? Like, if you want to connect with the Latino community, you go to restaurants that are Latino, but not only do that, host an event for games that you know Hispanic people are going to watch. Barcelona, Real Madrid, River Plate, Boca Juniors. Host them for America versus Chivas. These are games and things that the Latino community, these are big clubs that they want to see. You can start interacting with those people and understanding, okay, why are these people gravitated towards these teams? And it's the people that they send out there have to be skilled at knowing how to talk to people as well. Hey, tell me why you support this club. Start understanding where that comes from. It stems from, oh, you know what, my father was a fan of this team. Or when I was little, we would always root for this because X, Y, and Z. So you start understanding this, but you have to learn how to incorporate yourself.
Sounds like they need to hire the chief fan officer as soon as possible. And that chief fan officer needs to habla español. And
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I almost thought like a CLFO, like Chief Latino Fan Officer. I'm not kidding. They had this idea for this chief fan officer, which is really the person that's supposed to go out there and be in touch with everybody.
Yeah.
Let's hope sure as shit he can speak Spanish. Or
yeah. Well, I don't think you can just we want them to be Spanish. I hope they're Spanish too, but hey, let that not be the primary focus. That is going to help a lot, though. If it is, I'd rather them hire somebody who's Latino than not, but also have a great understanding of the MLS and understand how to connect with people through it, because the MLS is a totally different monster. So the person that they hire has to have a great understanding of MLS culture, how to incorporate first-generation Latinos into the MLS, and how to incorporate that fan base as well. You know what I'm saying?
And I do want to say, I want to add to what everybody was, in generalizing things, I think boots on the ground counts for a lot. Just being present, right? Having that visibility. If you're not going to these tournaments, these local tournaments, if you're not going to these youth soccer games and things like that in general, right? You're never going to connect with the fan base in total, in a more, filtered way into the Latino community as well. Right? It's just, you're not going to have the opportunity. You got to be present, right? You got to do the footwork, and having a position like that, I think would be ideal. You don't necessarily have to be of the community, but I think knowing the Spanish language to be able to relate and have that sense of culture, right? And just understanding that. So it could be anybody. It could be, it doesn't necessarily have to, like anything else, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that looks like a Latino or anything, because let's be honest, it's a giant melting pot, right? And that is the biggest thing, right? It's just, it doesn't matter how you look, you're Latino, you speak Spanish, and you know the culture, then you're Latino, right?
Yeah, and so Yavi, I would bring you in on this, right? Because we all know, or at least the majority of us know, that you've applied for that CFO role, right? So, what are some things that you would like to do first, like day one, right? Say you've got your HR crap out the way, right? And they're like, go do your thing, right? What are you doing, right? Tell us some stuff about that.
So a lot of people will know me by the content I've created about the chief officer position, and me applying, and me wanting to want it with all my heart. One thing I wanted to mention before I go into that, Lee, is that I think you created a really good point on the conversation about the overall marketing for Charlotte FC. I don't think it's a Latino issue. It's just that we are craving more more movement and more engagement with the Latino community, because we can see that making the team successful. But at the end of the day, I have many American friends that are not Latino who don't know we have a soccer team. So there's still a huge gap between just the city of Charlotte, the state of North Carolina, South Carolina. If they're going to be included, there's this blind sight that is not letting people see that we have a team that's going to start playing in March. So I think you made a super valid point by saying this is not a Latino problem. This is a whole marketing problem, because they're not reaching out to anybody. They are making very few events. Any type of advertising that they're doing is just, I don't know, it's very specific, and it's not reaching soccer fans. So I think there's a huge misunderstanding on what the marketing team needs to do. And me personally, I see it as they are trying to fill the seat with season ticket holders more than actual fans for the team. And it shows with their marketing schemes. They are pushing those season tickets hard on Facebook, on Instagram, all the social media, everywhere they can. One thing they're missing is that they're not pushing it in Spanish. So there can be another step that they could make. But overall, their focus on season tickets sales is just unnecessary. Because if they were targeting soccer fans, I'm sure a lot more people would sign up. And
Is there an MLS team that you see that we could maybe learn from, that you feel like are doing a great job of connecting with both?
Austin FC.
Austin
FC is doing an unbelievable job across the board. I don't know if you guys are following them, but I've been following them for about a year as they moved into. But everything they're doing, I just talked to an Austin FC fan the other day over here. Everything they're doing is, if you go onto their website, onto their About section, and they talk about inclusivity, they state in their creed, we are bringing people together regardless of race, gender, and socioeconomic ability. That's on their website, not on Charlotte FC's website. Just saying.
Yeah,
I want to say
go ahead.
I was just going to go to Jonathan's point. I think the socioeconomic is one point of the whole thing, right? And they just, I hate for them to do a bait and switch, right? They're sort of trying to maybe not doing enough as a way to build up momentum and just sort of anticipation, and then turn it around and say, yes, now we're going to throw all this money at it, or we're going to really do a lot of events. But hasn't felt that way, right? You're almost expecting it. Like, I wish that they would all of a sudden just say, listen, tomorrow we're going to have like 30 events, and it just really hasn't felt that way. Because of traditionally, right, especially given with the limited amount of time that we have to kick off, you tend to start these sort of projects and things like that way ahead of time, right? And it just hasn't, and we're getting very little answers too.
That's a great point, Eddie. The whole idea of like, hey, tell us on October or whatever, we're going to have that big pre-party. Tepper was talking about like a pre-whatever, or whatever it is. But my God, just tell us something, what's coming. Because if you are planning, hey, because don't forget, Tepper owns the Panthers. The Panthers are going to be omnipresent, Panthers in that stadium. Yep. All and they have the other group, which is Nick controls, which is Charlotte FC. But it would be great just to say, listen, we've got all this stuff coming, and trust me, everybody, by March, it's just going to ramp up. It's going to be a crescendo to everything happening. So you're right, you're not seeing anything now. I'm curious, real quick, because I don't listen to any Latino Espanol radio. They're not doing anything audio-wise. We don't see any billboards. We don't see any reach out. We don't see any commercials at all. Because
in general, though, we don't see that.
Yeah,
right?
we don't see any.
The Latino market, right? If that's what you were referring to, JT, yeah. But I don't see it at all. I don't see it anywhere. I mean, I cannot.
But to Eddie's point, it'd be great if they just said, listen, everybody, we're about to blow this shit out. It's going to be on. It's going to be great starting October 1st or
Right.
whatever. But we don't know. And something tells me they don't exactly know either.
Yeah. So one thing that I've talked to some people in Austin, Jonathan brings a great point. Los Verdes actually was started 2 or 3 years before the club was actually playing, right? Which is their biggest supporter group. Those guys got a big following. They also have another one called La Mugra, which like more relates to like those lower income, like you're coming from kind of like the hood a little bit, supporters base. So I think that's important too. They need a banging. I touched this on our show. They need a banging Spanish supporter group that understands Latino culture and understands the soccer culture and can blend in both and bring an atmosphere where people want to come in.
And all valid points, right? So to Jonathan's point, you bring up Austin, right? We've become pretty good friends with We Are Austin TV. So shout out to them boys and Top 3 podcast. You're into the Austin scene.
Get us tickets. Get us tickets.
Well, yeah, I'm planning on going over there soon. So I'll
yeah.
You're the one with the money, bro. Go bet something in Vegas, man, and make us some money, bro. So
take us all down, man.
Me? Wait. You see me sitting in the car right now. If I had money, I'd be sitting in one of those suites over there at the MGM Grand. You see me sitting in the car right now, right?
Yeah. But my point is with the Austin fellas, right? I mean, is it that there's just more Latinos in that area than there is in Charlotte? Or educate me, folks, right? So they just sort of showed up.
I don't know about that, but in my worldview, I think Charlotte FC has to compete with that same piece of the pie, right? Where you have the Panthers, right? You have the Checkers, you have the Hornets, you have all the sports entertainment on top of that, right? Whatever you take home socioeconomically, you have to split that between your Netflix, your Hulu, your HBO Max, and everything else. That's your entertainment budget, right? Outside of your necessities, those are more like your wants. And so how many people really have the amount of socioeconomic flexibility, right, to be able to afford just another team as well?
Yeah.
And the PSL's conversation obviously gets into that, and it's just so tough for that to happen.
And another thing to that is when you mentioned Austin, Austin's a good city to emulate because it's similar in size as far as population to Charlotte, but there is a higher concentration of Hispanic community. I think it's about 30 to 35% versus our 17%, right?
Yeah.
So, and then from our 17%, if you look further down, there's a big, it's distributed between people from Mexico, people from Central America, South America, and then in Austin is a little bit more similar demographics, more either Mexican American. So there's a little bit of that.
Right on the money.
Right.
Yeah. So how many other sports teams do they have?
They don't have
any other sports teams.
But this is the point that I want to make though. Like, tell me, like I don't know because I don't watch any other sports. Is there a big Latin-based Panthers fan? Is there a big Latin-based Hornets fans? Is there a big Latin-based Charlotte Knights fan? Because I don't think there is. And this is the sport that most Latinos are going to connect with. So this is where they can pull from that. Yeah, we'll be competing on every other sport for some of those fans. You'll have some neutrals, you'll have some soccer fans, but the general basis of the Latino community, no one really gives a rip about any other sport.
Yeah. Well, once again, and I think they're missing the point right there, right? Because that kind of frees you up to target that audience. They're not.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say on Jorge, back of Jorge's point, is my gosh, if you are going to target, to market, to push, to do anything, push it towards the Latino community because they can give a shit less about Hornets basketball.
Yeah.
Or Checker. I mean, come on. and Panthers maybe a little bit, but my gosh, if they're going to get into anything locally and spend their money, maybe not on season tickets, it's going to be Charlotte FC, you know?
So they do a better job of capitalizing on engagement. I mean, you really saw, like, I was looking through their numbers. When they did that messy DM tweet thing and then they posted on Instagram, the activity for them went through the roof, right? So figure out how to connect what's going on in the world and what's going on in our city to get that engagement up. When you get that engagement up, other people start talking.
Yeah, so to the point of other sports, right? Yavi, I see you kind of posting some Hornet stuff, right? what is the Hispanic attendance to the games? Like, how does that look? Like, can you maybe give us some insight on that?
Yes. So a lot of you guys will see a lot of sports content because one of my main goals with everything that I do is trying to bridge the gap between the Latino community and any type of sports or event that happen in the city. So I will be at all Panthers games. I'll be at the Hornets games. I will be everywhere. Everywhere there's a seat open, I will be there to open it for more of the people in the community. So by me being at these sporting events and the Hornets in particular, I feel like whenever Latino-based teams like Miami Heat, LA Lakers will fill up with Latino people, but the identity of Charlotte sports teams is not there, you know, and they don't embrace it. Just like I feel Charlotte FC. To make a little more sense, in general, I think there's so many people in Charlotte from other states that they choose to bring their own team from other ones, and they never embrace the Charlotte community. Right. On sports teams, no matter how good or how bad they are, and with the Latino community is even greater because they're not being catered to. I hosted a Latin night where 57,000 people were at Spectrum Center, and it was a Miami Heat versus Charlotte Hornets game, and 75% of the stadium was for Miami Heat because it was Dwayne Wade's last game. Not because the Charlotte Hornets were hosting Latin night. And even then, I was able to pull some people in because I had like a promo code that people could buy tickets from, and a lot of people did. But at the end of the day, it was one night, and from that point forward, they didn't do it again. They didn't maintain the momentum that they should have to continue bringing the Latino community. One thing they do every year for, I think, Hispanic Heritage Month, where they'll switch their jerseys to like Los Hornets and like El Heat and stuff like that throughout the whole NBA, but they're not embracing it or putting it out there, so people don't fucking know. Am I allowed to curse, first of all?
Yeah, and have at it.
Okay. Just because I'm like, this is super real, and it's something I'm very passionate about. So it's crazy, and I want to let you guys all know that if there was one sport that should have already intervened and hit the Latino community, is the Charlotte Knights. Why? Because 90% of their players are from Latin America. And
so
yet they don't.
Go ahead, I'll let you finish your thought.
And yet they don't. They also have like the Latin Night Week and things like that. And I purposely have reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I'm involved with the Latin community. I would love to do some things. I know your players are all Latin. They do all these things. And yet they I'll tell you what they told me. They don't have the budget to include me into trying to help them pull more people into their stadium. And that to me is nonsense, because at some point I didn't have a price, or I wasn't asking them. I was just saying, hey, give me access to do these things and try to pull more people to you. And again, I bring this up because the conversation through the Facebook post was, hey, sign some Latino players. If you sign Latino players and they do nothing with it, it's not going to help. It's not going to help because not everybody's going to know the player, and not everybody's going to be involved with the team. Just like that Raleigh team that signed Omar Bravo like 2-3 years ago. You know, so it can be a wasted resource to sign a Latino player and still not focus on the marketing to the community. So there's got to be more done.
Well, I have a different opinion on that. I mean, for those types of sports, like, it makes sense in my if you're looking at it from a business perspective, right? And you're saying, okay, we could probably get the Latino community engaged a little bit more in basketball, in football, in nights. The reality here, though, is from a perspective of like, how do you get soccer involved? This is an untapped territory that has a very high potential. Right? If I think I mentioned this on our show, if there was 10,000 English fans in Charlotte that were passionate the way like Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham fans are, and we weren't catering to them, that's an issue as well, because it's just an open market that you're not tapping into that has a high potential. Every other sport, I don't think, has the same type of potential with this particular community, because we're talking about soccer. We're talking about a sport that, like, I mean, like, I was upset all week because Messi left Barca for PSG. I mean, you don't get stuff like that and the passion in any other sport within the Latino community like you do in soccer, in my personal opinion, in Charlotte.
And I think you have a super valid point. But like Leo said earlier, soccer is such a big, important sport to Latin America that in Charlotte, you don't have just Mexican people. You have people from all of Central America and South America, to where anybody from the Caribbean loves baseball. And yet they are not attached to the Charlotte Knights, not even with their beautiful stadium or anything like that.
I want to say that a lot of that has to do with price point, right? Because there is a certain cost involved as a business. Like, to take the Charlotte Knights, right? There's a certain cost involved in running, you know, a hot dog and a soda is going to run you X amount. That's where they make their money, not necessarily on ticket sales, but they make a lot of money on the beer and the hot dogs and the sodas that they're selling at the place. But for you to be able to go out and have a good time, you got to spend a little bit of money. And that's one thing that the Latino community suffers from as a general thing. There really isn't a lot of high-paying jobs for Latinos out here in a lot of the sense. Some are professionals, but that's a very small group of people as opposed to the majority of everybody who's here in Charlotte, which is going back to one of, I think it was Jorge's point, is we get a lot of transplants, right? There's very few natives, right? Charlotte natives or North Carolinians that actually grew up and still stick around and have well-paying professional jobs that can afford that kind of entertainment, right? And that is another sore point as far as that is. It's definitely catering to something that the price point is just unreachable to a lot of these folks, right?
So to those points, right, I was kind of writing these down as you guys talked about it. So since Eddie, you kind of mentioned, you know, the cost once you get in the stadium, we won't get into the discussion of PSLs. We all know it's shit. We all hate it. It was the dumbest idea that they could have ever done. We all get that, right? But my point is, I was listening to a podcast that Nick was on about a week ago, right after the manager was announced. And he mentioned what they're trying to do. So if there's like a early game, let's say like a 1 o'clock on a Saturday, right? What they're trying to do, or what he would mention was an idea that they're throwing out there, was like sell beer nights or something like that to keep people after the game so they can put up the big screens and watch the rest of the MLS games. However, the city and the security are kind of pushing back on them, right? Saying, no, we can't do this because, you know, people get drunk, rowdy, causes a bunch of liability for the team itself, right? So I agree. I think, you know, depending on the pricing of single game tickets, it's going to be huge. Obviously, I personally don't think they're doing as well as they're letting on about the season tickets being sold, because if they were, it would be we would never hear the end of it, right? That we're selling out, we're doing this, we're doing that. And lastly, going back to the Miami and Lakers part, I would want to say, like, is it because those teams themselves bring a big Latino following that they get that sort of attention when they come to Charlotte? Or is it just Charlotte as a whole just sucks at marketing to Latinos, I guess is my point or my question.
Well, you know, I would say.
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. First of all, this guy just had a wreck over here in front of me, and that's why I'm kind of distracted. But some people can't handle Vegas. They literally just had a wreck right over here.
He's watching the show.
So you would think the Hornets would be more proactive, because the Hornets have a Latino coach. James Borrego is Latino. And you would think they would do. I think he's only one of 2 Latino coaches in the entire NBA. I could be wrong, but you would think they do more. As far as the Charlotte Knights go, I cover the Charlotte Knights. I'm there probably 60 games a year. They had a guy, Rafael Bastidas, who was their Latin outreach guy last year, 2019. There was not a season last year. 2019, they had a guy, Rafael Bastidas, who was there. They were doing Caballeros nights 4 nights a week, 4 times a year. They were engaging, but when COVID hit, I guess that kind of ended. So we haven't seen it. We've seen Rafi every now and then, but they were engaging. But like you said, it's not anymore. As far as I'll go ahead and hand that back.
Well, just to be clear a little bit on that though, like I just think with every other sport, the continuity of the fan base for the Latinos, I think what they're doing is great. Like you host a Latino night, you involve the Latino culture, but in reality, are those people going to be there? Or is that going to be a stem of the fan base going 2, 3, 5 months, years on end? I think the best shot of that is through a sport like ours, like soccer. You know what I'm saying? I don't like what you're saying, and the topics that you're talking about are great, but I think in terms of the potential and the longevity of it, what Hispanic people tend to like more, and what I've seen, because I've gotten very involved in the Latino soccer community, and I see it, man. People are passionate about their teams. They're passionate about. I constantly have conversations with people about Real Madrid, about Barcelona, about Liga MX teams against MLS teams. So I mean, that culture is there. Let's capitalize on these guys. Like for example, like say they hire the chief fan officer, right?
Yep.
So how do you engage people, bro? You host parties for Champions League, and you find Barcelona, Real Madrid fans, and you talk to them about these teams. You find people that love Copa Libertadores. You talk to them about River. You talk to them about Boca. You talk about different teams in South America, right? You start engaging with them, and then you add in, hey, this is the type of culture we're trying to create in Charlotte. You start building it up. Why? Because you have to learn how to relate, right? And the best form of relatability is if you can connect with somebody based on what they love. Because at the end of the day, the MLS is so new. Nobody really, in the Latino culture, nobody follows an MLS team. Everybody follows somebody in Europe, somebody in Mexico, somebody in Central America, somebody in South America. And we gravitate towards that passion of the teams that we pull for, whether it's Liverpool, Barcelona, River, Barcelona in Ecuador, whatever team it is. You have to learn how to relate there. Talk to them about those teams and bring them in. You know what I'm saying?
So I noticed you didn't bring up PSG at all there.
Are we talking about the French fan base?
No, but I mean, as a whole, right? Until there was a MLS team in Charlotte, I could give a shit about the MLS, right? I would watch it if it was on the TV and stuff, but it wasn't me getting up at 7 a.m. in the morning to catch a Spurs game, knowing that they were going to lose to, I don't know, Burnley, right? And it was, but the passion is there for soccer fans as a whole. It's like, how does the club connect? I know we've kind of driven this conversation towards the Latino community, but the more I think about it is, are they really connecting with any of us outside of the soccer fandom, right? The ones that have the passion, the ones that go play every Sunday morning, or playing Wednesday nights. We're out there Tuesday evenings, and it's pissing down with rain.
And our season ticket holders. Because that's the whole point, too. Because I remember Chico telling us on our 3rd episode, hanging out in Z's treehouse, he's like, listen, Latinos, they're not going to be buying season tickets. They're going to get some tickets, day of or whatever, but they're not going to be buying it. And that's the whole thing from a business perspective, because it is, at the end of the day, a business. They've been so focused on season ticket holders and PSLs and all that stuff. It is almost like an afterthought. But my gosh, if they aren't actively thinking about it, whoever the CFO is, he better speak Spanish. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
the whole thing.
Yeah, I think JT, you actually have a great point on that, and that's the combination that has to happen, right? So that the front office with what's going to happen on the field. So I think one of the things that they're missing quite a lot is really connecting with the passion of the soccer fan in general, but specifically with the Hispanic community. If Charlotte FC from day one was trying to get me pumped up to make sure that the stadium's full, without ever mentioning price, without ever mentioning pricing structures, like we need the stadium full, we need the energy. If they were focused on bringing people to the seats instead of getting people to buy seats, if you know what I mean, it would have been a different hit. But right now it's just I feel like I'm getting cable, like I'm getting a call every now and then about season tickets and then this and that. And it's like, man, like, I don't want to feel like I'm being sold on something that's not thinking about me in general, right? Like, I don't want to feel that way. And then to build passion or to kind of connect with that passion, I think hopefully the way that they're building the team is a good indication of what they're trying to do. But you got to build a different team. You got to build a completely different team that really caters to Latinos connect with Madrid, Latinos connect with Barcelona, we'll connect with teams because we like quality, man. We like to see quality in the field.
One of the things that
passion, right? Like Lee came to the Olympia game and you see how passionate Spanish soccer fan bases are. And I'm just saying, like, we need to connect with that. We have that here. To your point, JT, about like people not buying season tickets in the Latino community, it's because it's not catered the right way. The strategy should be, hey, we need to target these first generation Latinos who are bilingual, and targeting them, we can target their close influences, which is their family members, right? You get them involved, you entice them, they start building. I mean, this is what I've seen in a lot of in the Atlanta fan base, in the Austin fan base, in the LA fan base, where they have a lot of those first generation Latinos who are passionate about their team. And guess what? They pull in those other crowds as well. So I think that would be a great strategy for them to go for.
I think one of the other things that would definitely help in a more generalized sense of the word, and then it can get filtered into the Latino community, is just sign a player that's local. Sign a player that's got, that is also Latino, right? So, and I know that's already happened, but I think you would be able to connect that way a lot more.
So, I mean, I guess I struggle with the player idea, right? Me personally, I'm an immigrant myself too, right? First generation, still on the green card, yada, 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 right? So my question is a player really that important? To me, I want a winning team. I could give a shit who plays, right? What race he is, where he's from. I just want to know when I go out there spending my hard-ass money that I earned, the best I could, that I'm going to have a team. But I'm going to have a team that's going to compete.
The reason I say that is, have you ever? I mean, you've been to a youth soccer game here, right? What do you do? The parents sit around, they bring their chairs, and they watch their kids play, right? The same thing happens in college, right? You sit around and you watch your son or daughter play, but it's usually the local fan base, right? So you're right, regardless of whether what color and race they are, just pull somebody from somewhere local that is good enough, right? That can make the team and just put them up in the forefront. I think that should have been one of the first signings they would have had instead of having to bring, some international or something like that into the squad, right? Because that automatically, mom and dad are going to reach out. They're going to reach out to every other parent that wasn't part of that youth club, and that they're going to. I see that they're trying to do that with the U17 team that they have and the U15s. I'm not quite sure whether they are quite ready to actually put them in the first team, right? But if they can manage to do that, I think they'd get a lot more buy-in anyways.
Well, I mean, we do have a local Charlotte player, right? Bronico himself is from Charlotte. He's from Greensboro area, played at UNC Charlotte, got signed by Charlotte FC, and now he's playing at Charlotte Independent. So he's hit all the Charlottes just about he possibly could. But, I hear what you guys are saying, right? Let's have a Latino player that the Latino community can get behind, and but to me it's kind of a shallow thought, because all that's going to really do is sell shirts, right, and that sort of thing, right? I mean, I feel like the marketing has been hit and miss. We can blame that onto the fact that Pepper and Glick dropped the ball way back when. We had COVID. Nick came in. He's had 6 months to kind of get this whole company built, right? And then the other part of that is where is the marketing? Like we keep saying, like until they actually get out there, like they don't need to be at NASCAR. They don't need those kind of folks could give a shit about soccer, right? They don't. Why are they not out there, like you said, Eddie? Out there at the grassroots level, put a pop-up thing. You go down the street on a Saturday morning, between, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., and there's nothing but kids playing soccer. all you have to do is put a little tent up there with an information packet or some stickers or whatever, and they could tap into that whole market. And I just feel like they're missing a hell of a lot.
That's why I'm wondering if it's simply a oversight or is it a strategy? I mean, come on now. I mean, we've had plenty of time now. We've had plenty of time, and to me, this feels like it's, and like if they're trying to sell tickets, where are they going to sell tickets to? Places like Suffolk Punch, where people have money. They're not going to go into East Charlotte. They're not going to go down South Tryon because in their mind, those people don't have money. So they're trying to fill the seats. And if you go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just saying, I had a conversation with one of the reps there at Charlotte at the Suffolk Punch. I was trying to think of the name of the bar. And I was like, why are you guys hosting me here? I was like, this is not the place. I'm like, 80% of these people don't care. I'm over here about to cry because Messi won Copa America. Nobody else gives a crap. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being real, right?
I was standing right next to you.
Right? Yeah. And then their thought process was like, they need to see y'all's passion in order to connect. I'm like, bro, it's 4 of us. It's 4 versus 400 people right here. No one's going to care what we're talking about. If you bring 50, 100, and you see everybody's excited, I mean, like, they just, I just think they don't understand. Some of the people that work for the club have never understood how soccer works. And to me, that's very, very important in the nucleus of the people running the club. They have to understand how soccer works, or else we're going to see these random events at NASCAR, at, you know, just random spots. Well, you're not going to connect with nobody. You're going to connect with 2% of people.
Is it how soccer works, or is it how the soccer fan thinks, right?
There you go. How the soccer fan thinks.
Right, because, you know, we're going to be wherever, right? I could be in my living room. I could be at Hooligans. I could be at Big Ben's. I could be at all those spots, right? But when I heard the pop-up at the NASCAR event and that sort of thing, I kind of chuckled because, you know, those are not the people we need to be targeting. So, you know, it just kind of, it was just nothing against you folks out there that might support NASCAR either, right? Welcome to the world of soccer, right?
I don't think they're watching this right now, Lee.
You know, they might catch it on replay. But Javi, man, give us some thoughts.
Man, the thing is, as the more you guys speak, the more thoughts that come into the head, and it's just overwhelming that we all want the same, right? The success for the team, and yet they are not making the right moves. And we're like begging. We're like, yo, do something, please. I'll say something super honest to you guys. I don't understand why the event at the Underground for Coach Ramirez was only for season ticket holders. It was such a successful event that if it would have been an open invite with long enough time for them to plan it, that it could be twice as big or 3 times as big. And yet they were proactively canceling people's tickets not to come because they weren't season ticket holders. So that to me shows their focus on the season ticket spectrum, or the comment on there. One of the points that you guys have made about going grassroots and being there involved in the community, to me, that's the biggest thing that needs to happen. Like Jorge was saying, we know there's a huge lineup of main events that are going to happen within the soccer spectrum, that there needs to be already events listed for those, whether they're watch parties or just setting up a tent so that people can at least see the brand. Liga MX and the MLS, I think that's a huge move for Latinos to want to stick around and see what the MLS is going to do. But here in Charlotte, since we're not playing yet, we're not necessarily super involved with it. The support groups, I feel like even the support groups need some type of flavor. You know, unfortunately there isn't a Latino support group for it, but there's also not any enticement for Latinos to join because they are also not at the grassroots soccer events or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I would take that back, right? And shout out to QC Royals, by the way, for the picture on Twitter. To take that back, I mean, you know, one of the biggest supporters groups in Charlotte was in the QC or the Queen City Cup, right? Queen City, for instance, they played this weekend, right? Why wasn't Charlotte out there, right? We know that there's some big things coming up. Like, you know, it's kids are about to go back to school. What does that mean? Sports starts up, soccer starts up. You know, where are you at? Are you in the schools, right? Are you doing that sort of thing? Like, there's just so much more that could be done. Maybe they're working on it and they just need to get the material printed. But at the same time, it's like, come on, guys.
Or maybe they don't know about it, you know. Maybe they don't know about those things. And that's what I'm saying, where that informed decision for your front office staff or is, you got to have somebody who knows these things, right? Yeah. You got to have somebody who knows, who is just sitting in the office or sitting on a Zoom call or whatever. Yeah. And is like, hey man, there's a big game for the local, you know, Latino League on Sunday. What are we doing? Because if they don't know about that, I mean, think about like the Fiesta League, man. I see like pictures about like that thing is crazy stuff. People are really like, they're really into that. You know, they really care about the league. And it's like, one of the things you could do is say, why don't you make one of the new fields or one of the new grassroots fields the official home of the Fiesta League? You know, that all of a sudden you're going to the Charlotte FC field instead of just the field. But those are ideas that have to come from inside the front office, inside the executive field.
What about Mariachi in Atlanta? I think there's like 100 or 150 people on the live. I'm like, people are watching like just small Charlotte teams and Atlanta teams play. Right. There's like, I'm like, bro, like you're not capitalizing on this right now. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, they're not necessarily in the front office, but there is a guy. There's Patrick Valdez, and he's quite active in a lot of the local stuff, and he's now working for the organization. But I'm not sure exactly whether he has a seat at the table, sort of saying.
Yeah,
right?
That's why I think it's important. Like the marketing people, like they got to understand marketing. Don't get me wrong. Like, you need the analytics and all of that, but you also need those people to also understand soccer and the way a soccer fan thinks, right? That's why these positions to me are very key. I want the people that are in these positions to understand soccer and have some knowledge in soccer, because if they don't, I think overall they're going to keep making these random decisions that none of us understand why they're doing it.
And to back up that point that you just made, Jorge and Leo, is that they have to be there, they have to understand, but then they have to have a voice or feel like it is a culture within those meetings that they can say, no, you need to do this, you need to do this. And that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out too. If they even do have people, and the CFO idea is interesting, but if they have people that have enough power to really make the point, and no, you do need to sponsor this field or whatever it would be.
So somebody just sent me a direct message earlier on Twitter, from Nick Kelly, basically saying that they're trying to get the Latino supporters group hard. They just need somebody out there to step up and start this, right? Obviously, the club themselves can't start a supporters group, right? So, who out there in the Latino community is willing to do that hard work, right? I think they need 22 paying members or whatever it is, right, to be an official supporters group. Who's stepping up to do that, right? So, I mean, go ahead.
I don't know.
Why don't they start by dropping the 22 paid and just organically have a group instead of it always being about money?
That's a valid point. That's a very valid point.
Yeah, I would say though that's
we have a pod coming out soon about that, so get ready for that. That's
I would say that to your point, Jonathan, that's one of those things that I don't necessarily like, but it's part of the culture here in the States to be part of a fan group. Like a lot of the fan groups that I know that are call themselves official, they have some sort of membership fee for some reason. And a lot of it does go back to, you pay the tab at the bar, or you pay for it every weekend to host whatever it is that you're hosting. That's just one of those things that's part of the culture. And I also was going to say, I don't know if it's an official group, but there's a barra CLT out there somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like there's already a group of somebody that is moving, that is trying, and then somehow all of a sudden we don't know about it, or it's not as official as it should be, or something like that. But it's just a matter of reaching out and understanding where they're at. So there is a group out there that is already kind of getting the Hispanic community together, but they need support as well, right? So from us, from the club, from everybody else, to help organize something that they may not be familiar on how to organize. It's like, just because I love soccer doesn't mean I'm great at marketing. Just because I love soccer doesn't mean I'm great at leading a grassroots movement, but I can give ideas and help somebody. But somebody needs to use their strengths to be able to lead that guy.
So real quick, right? I got to correct myself. The 22 isn't for the official supporters group. It's just to be on the council. Now, fair enough, right? But I believe, and as TriMed says here, right, it's not just 22 paid members. They have to also have season tickets. I mean, so, Mr. Kelly, are we asking the Latino community to start a supporters group, ask them to have 22 members that are paying season ticket holders, and then so that way they have a voice on the supporters council itself? Right?
22 members if you do like the lowest, which I think was 550. So you have to pretty much bring in 12K to the club to be part of this, to be considered a official supporters group or have a seat at the. So I think we've got something coming up soon, and we're gonna have a more of a deep discussion on this as well. But there's a couple of things that they can do, and a couple of things that the supporters group can do that I think would help create a good happy medium to jumpstart some more supporters groups.
Right, and so again, right, there's no paid member requirement for the supporters group itself, but there is a paid requirement of season tickets to be in the supporters council. Right. Now I feel like we should, we're trying to give these guys an in, or we're trying to generate the market around the Latinos as well. Again, I don't know, man. It just keeps coming back to me.
Yeah, which I mean, I've looked through kind of the requirements, and I mean, some of the stuff is legit. Like you need to have some sort of business license, because they can't just give you money, right? But there's other things like that. The 22, like if there was 6-7 supporters groups with a fan base of 80 to 120 members, that like and then more people are trying to come on, then that would make sense to require 22. But right now, can you name me 5 supporters groups that you think have 22 paid season ticket holders to be continued? That's my question.
Right, and that's all fair too. So, second, why I do this? Sorry, folks, but yeah, there's a lot going on, right? And it keeps, to me, like, 1 second. We're going to do this.
Hey, real quick, shout out to Lee, who produces the show and also stars in the show. Because I've got a little bit of entertainment. People are like, man, Lee's not even looking at the camera. He's always messing with shit. He's back there making things come up, doing all that stuff. There you go.
There you go.
So this is the requirements, right? So basically, they must have at least 22 pledge members. They must have at least 22 pledge members with season tickets in the Charlotte FC supporters section, right? So like you said, Jorge, I believe it comes to like 12 grand, right?
See, you have some people in the comments, which is great, like David and Michael, who are part of supporters group. Why doesn't Charlotte FC, when they roll out something like this, have these guys on and explain this stuff? Because they're doing a poor job of doing it themselves, and these guys are part of different supporters groups, and we can understand the thought process behind it. Right?
Well, next week we want to do a live show with the supporters group. So I've reached out to I had a few people respond back, so we can get into that next week. But
they're all making great points, but the club doesn't do a great job of making those points.
Yeah, I just find it hard, though. I mean, the 22 pledge members in the season tickets obviously is so that they can have they're invested in the party in the supporters section, right? To me, still, it just seems a lot of money just to be able to.
It means they're committed. They're a true supporter. I get
that.
The 22 is a little odd. I don't understand where that number.
2022 and all that. I'm assuming, right?
Oh yeah, is that? Hey, now that's some marketing.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a good squad number right there, right? You get your 11 starters and your 11 backups.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So I know we're running kind of long on this, so I want to give everybody a last word on here. So we'll just go from the top down. So Leo, go ahead, buddy. Give us your final thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thank you for having me on the show, and then everybody who actually participated on the comments. I think that's going to be key for the future, is just this engagement to continue to help inform the decisions in the front office. And I love the fact that this conversation is really combining our passion with some actual strategic moves that the club can make to actually make these things happen, so they have actionable items. So I really enjoy the conversation, man. So I really thank you all, Lee, JT, for hosting this and for letting me participate in it. Appreciate it.
That's what we're here for, man. And we're for the fans, by the fans, right? This is the
All
whole
day.
reason we started this fan TV, was so folks like yourselves could come on, have your voice, and be heard. So, Eddie, man, give us your final thoughts.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you for inviting me over. Thank you, JT and Lee, for and everyone else on the panel as well. I really do think that guys like me, who are very active in the community, who are actually out there running, tournaments and soccer teams and things like that, they really need to connect with guys like me. And I would like to hear a lot more from the front office as far as just reaching out to the community and actually making that connection. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And real quick, to the supporters, people that are posting in the chat, we'll have you on. I tell you what, reach out to us. We'll have you guys on next week, and we can go all over the requirements for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could last all night talking about this for sure. We're very passionate, right? So, Robbie, go ahead, buddy.
All right, real quick, just to make sure we're on the same page. It's Javi, like an H-A-V-I, but with a J.
That's my
That's
English
my
accent.
fault. I've been calling Jorge forever. When Lee originally called him George, and I said it's got to be Javi. I mean, that's how you say it.
Yeah,
But-
it's Javi. So it's all good. It's all good. Thank you guys for having me. Obviously, you guys know that I am a one-man band, and all the things that I try to do for Charlotte FC are to help the community and to be able to connect Charlotte FC to the Latino community, but I can only do so much. I am hopeful that I get this chief fan officer position, and then be able to bridge that gap a little bit more and be able to go to those Saturday games, go to the Honduran Classic games at Matthews Motorplex, whatever it is, and then just stay active with the community. Obviously, being in Charlotte for such a long time, I know when all the festivals are happening. I know somebody mentioned earlier that Charlotte FC is planning on being involved with the Ola Festival, which usually happens in September, October. That's a huge festival, so I would love to see that actually happen. And then there's more festivals that go throughout the whole year, that Charlotte FC just needs to be involved to tap in to the hearts of the Latino community, because we need to be catered to. And like I said, I think that's the biggest thing. Right now, we're just not being catered to, and we feel like we don't have to appeal to Charlotte FC. So we stick around with our local teams. I'm from Guadalajara, so I'm a Chivas fan. And until there was Charlotte FC, I was a Chivas fan here in Charlotte also.
Very good.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Javi.
Yes, Yavi.
Javi.
All right, Top End, go ahead, buddy.
All right, you can find us everywhere. I mean, I'm Top Bin 90. We do a lot of content. We cover everything soccer, and we try to highlight a lot of different players in the area. We also talk about different sports teams, like a big Liverpool fan, big Barca fan. And we also have some really good stuff coming out soon on Chief Fan Officer. We also have some really cool stuff, some perspectives from different people and supporters groups. So watch out, because we've got some really good stuff that I'm excited that's coming out soon. And just follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter at TopBin90, and so we'll get a MySpace soon.
There you go.
Yes.
All right, Jonathan, man, give us your final thoughts, buddy.
All right, so once again, thank you for having me, and thank you for being on the panel. It's been great with you guys. We as a whole are doing so much, just having these conversations, and they're great. But these are relationships, and in a relationship, they're what? They're 50-50, basically. I need to see we're going on 50%. I need to see Charlotte FC coming to their 50%. I need to see them out, like Javi just said. I need to see them out at the Ola Charlotte thing. Why weren't they at the Viva Colombia and the Viva Venezuela? I mean, there's so many events around town that they could have been at, they could have engaged, and they weren't there. Hopefully, within the next couple of weeks and months, we'll see that engagement. I think opportunities like this and conversations like this are important, that they are actually watching and seeing and can work off what we're saying. And on that note, I got a blackjack table that's calling my...
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah, he's gone.
That was
Let it ride.
so. JT, do you have anything you want to say, buddy?
I'm stoked because what Lee's vision was for what we have created over the last year has come to fruition. To have it and to have the technology to get on here and have this conversation with normal people from everywhere. It's great stuff. And I just want to reiterate what Lee said earlier. We take it to heart for the fans, by the fans. Because first and foremost, we're fans, damn it. And we're doing this out there, and we always want to be a voice. And we'll be outside the stadium interviewing people every game. We'll be at the tailgates, and we want to continue the conversation. And it's a pleasure for us to be able to host this conversation. It really means something. So, yeah.
Yep. So just on top of what JT said, yes, we're here for the fans by the fans, damn it. And, if you haven't already, please hit that sub button. That's all we ask for you. We hope to keep bringing this content. Supporters groups out there, hit me up in the DMs. We're trying to get something together for next week. We got a few of you already. I know there's plenty more out there. Just go ahead and send a message, and we'll send you the info for this meeting. Everybody that's on the panel, I appreciate you guys taking the time out and joining us. It means a lot to JT and I, and to the folks out there that's watching this. We love you guys.
Gracias.